Starting. I think we're on. I think the mic shows it's on.
Yeah.
The mic.
Picture's rolling, you're moving.
Picture's rolling.
Mike's moving.
The Yeti's on. Okay, yeah. Okay, well, for anyone that's joining us online, thank you for popping in. Today's Tech Tuesday is about Moodle restrictions and activity completion, which are kind of two continuations of the idea of gamifying your classroom. Although you don't have to gamify in order to use these things. There are ways to set up your really automation of your class. It's the way to set up automatic differentiation in your class. It's a way to do a lot of really cool things. And I will tell you that activity completion and restrictions requires some initial investment of time, but I think they're well worth it. It's one of those things you can do that you get that investment back in the long haul on your class. So we're looking at my hardware class right now, but we might switch over to another class as we're doing it. I have a lot of activity completions in my class. The first thing you need to know in order to use activity completion is you have to turn it on in order for it to work. You do that through your course administration. On your administration block, if you go to Edit Settings and you go down towards the bottom, you have to have completion tracking on for any of this to work. By default, completion tracking I think is off on all the classes, aren't they? And you have to turn it on in order to get it. So once you say yes here, then you'll have the ability to track the completion of activities. Now, what that means, and we're going to talk activity completion first before restrictions, because restrictions can have to do with all kinds of things, one of which is activity completion. So we're going to go into my course introduction, and we're going to look at some basic activity completion things. So right here we have a link. And this link is my ICANNs that my students go into and read what the ICANNs are of the class intro. They need to be able to explain emergency procedures, understand where we go, know the class expectations. I just have these 4 ICANNs as a demo for my students. The question is, did they ever go and read it? And if we just have links on Moodle, there's really no way to know. And I say that with a caveat because the reporting system, you could go in and go through all the reports to see that, but there's no easy way. Would you say that's a good statement, Dan? There's no easy way to know if they went to it, and activity completion lets you do that. So I've got this link that's just a page, and I want to know whether kids came to it. So if I go to Edit Settings, down here under the settings, one of them is activity completion, and if I open that up, you can see it's locked right now, but it allowed me to track it. You know what? It's probably better if I just go and I'm going to make a copy of it for ease so that we can look at that. So I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to go to the duplicate down here. Where'd the duplicate go? Did I already do it? Did I hit it? I thought it would be right underneath. There we go. So I'm going to go into this one instead. Because no one's seen this one before. And if I go to Edit Settings on this, and I go down to Activity Completion, shouldn't the second one, I'm going to unlock the completion so that we see what it looks like. So when I look at Activity Completion, this is just a link. So when I click here, Completion Tracking, the options are Do Not Show, and that's the default. It's going to say I'm not tracking this activity even if I have it on, but then I can go down and I have 2 other options for this one. Show activities complete when the following conditions are met, or students can manually activate it. I try to use automatic ones as much as possible. Show activity complete when the following conditions are met. There's only one condition available on a simple page is student must view this activity to complete it. So as soon as they click on it, it's complete. You could say, that's not what I want. I want them to indicate it's as completed, which means the students have to manually do it. And what that means back here on the course page, turn editing off, The one that is automatically done has hashed lines around it right here, and the one the student has to manually do has a solid line around it, meaning they have to say, I've done it, and they go and click it themselves. So they can go in and out of here as much as they want to on this activity, and it's going to remain unchecked until they go and say, I've done it. Okay? And the idea, I think, there is that just reading it doesn't mean you comprehended it. Maybe you want the kids to verify that you've done it. So those
or use it to open something else.
Well, that can be true here as well. But
but you can do it with both of them.
Right. So that's what activity completion is. Now, the activity completion is more complex as you go. That's just a simple page. I'm gonna delete that because I don't want that to cause confusion in my activities. I'm going to go down to a section that my students haven't been to yet, so that I can edit the activity completion without them having done it before. So you can see all these things here are activity completion things. So in fact, let me go to the next one. Some of these, they have to say, yes, I did that. And some of them, just like the other one, they click on it and it automatically says, in this case, I'm going to go to the edit settings and show you. Down here under the activity completion, this one says, show activity complete when conditions are met, and it's only completed when the feedback is submitted. So not viewed. I don't want them to get completion for it when they view it. They have to actually submit something for it. So different things. The more interactive an item is in Moodle, the more options I really have to complete the activity. So that's a feedback. Let me go back here. And when we get to things like, here's this project that they're going to be doing in class, and on this one, on the activity completion down here, I click on that. So on this one, they don't just have to view it. So required to view this activity. This one requires them just to view it. You can also say they have to get a grade, or they have to submit it. Those are all options on this one. I'm not sure why I said view on that one. That seems...
But you see how that's actually great, that's grayed out? It's because somebody has actually already done the activity or been involved in the activity. So if you end up changing your mind on what is considered a completion, you'll have to actually unlock it.
Like I just did.
Yeah.
Because nobody should be able to see this at all.
Yeah. Then make the change and then save. And once you do that, then that will actually be the locked completion criteria.
Yeah, I'm confused why anybody had done that. So you could say just view it. I don't know why I would say that. I'm going to say they have to get a grade or at least submit it in order to get a completion on that.
We can't really invite people in if we actually lock the
Do
door.
I lock the door? Oh, okay.
Let's leave it ajar.
So different activity completion things are different for each kind of activity, and you kind of have to look at them. For instance, the one that you can have is something like how Moodle quizzes work. And on Moodle quizzes, there's some more options for activity completion. For instance, do they have to view it? That we've already seen that. Do they have to receive a grade? We've already seen that. But now there's an option if they have to receive a passing grade or all available attempts completed, meaning that if you've got one that they could take 5 times, once they've taken it 5 times, it's counted as complete, even if they're still failing the activity. Yeah.
Where do I make that passing grade?
Okay, so passing grade has nothing to do with an A, B, C, D scale. There's nothing to do with what we would call passing. What passing is here is what you as a teacher are saying is passing for this activity to be done, and it's back up here under the grade. So under here, under the grade, I've got my category, and the next thing down is grade to pass, and this has nothing to do with anything in the grade book. This has to do with the activity being complete. So this, for instance, I don't know how many points this particular quiz is worth. This quiz is worth 50 points. So when I set it up, I said you've only passed it if you got an 80%. on this one. So that's what it is to pass it. And this passing, this activity completion for this can be used for tons of different things. Okay? So, in fact, I think now I understand why I said activity completion down here was students must receive a grade, but not passing, because this can be complete at the same time using the passing grade for something else, for badges.
Yeah.
So you can say you completed it as far as you got a grade, but to get the badge, you have to get an 80%.
And
so I use that for
badge,
badging.
well, yeah, because that's in a restriction set.
Right.
So not necessarily a badge that you have to get for a particular badge, but for a restriction of which where you're hiding stashes or badges, you know.
So
that's what the passing one.
I guess the first part is just to understand what activity completion is. It's restrictions that you put on as many or as few things as you. Well, no, not restrictions. It's that's the right word. It's
conditional.
Conditions. There we go. That's the one. It's conditions that you put on any particular assignment to say this is what I considered complete for that assignment. And just to let you see, there is a report that's just about activity completion. And if you use a lot of activities, you can see I have a lot of activities. Obviously, we're not all the way through the course, but there's a lot of activities, almost everything. Do I track whether the students got it done? So some of these things, I'm not using this one this year, so you can see nobody got that. I can't move my mouse without it highlighting. Nobody got that one this time. But all these other ones that some people skipped and some people didn't, you can see are going to be used to track whether they get a badge at the end of that particular section. So activity completion just gives you a way to know whether things were done or not. And then you can use those activity completions and what you set on them to restrict other things in the course. So I guess activity completion is the first thing. It isn't the only thing having to do with restrictions, but I hate to talk about restrictions until we talk about the activities first. So does that, I know you just walked in late, but do you have any questions on that, Sharon?
No, I got that.
Okay.
Yeah, that I've been able to use.
Okay, so after activity completion, we want to talk about restrictions. And there are ways to do restrictions to the nth degree that's actually pretty crazy and great in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
So you can restrict whole sections of your course based on what groups kids are in. You can restrict particular activities in your course based on groups, based on grades, all kinds of stuff. For instance, let's say my E-days, we'll say the blogging we'll say that's an extra activity that my kids are going to do. I can make restrictions for this whole section of Moodle based on specific things. So I'm going to go ahead and go here to blogging, and when we go to edit, I'm going to edit the very top thing, if it'll let me. Why am I not clicking there? Why is it? There we go. It's not letting me hit it. So I'm going to edit this topic first. So there's my blogging things, just my header, but here under blogging, and we're talking about restricting access, this because it's the top thing, it's the whole section, this restriction that I might put on here, and I have none on here now. If I add a restriction, it means this entire section is under this restriction.
Section, aka topic.
Right, this whole topic is under the restriction. So when I hit add restriction, there are a ton of restrictions available to me to restrict based on, okay? So the first one is activity completion, which is why I wanted to talk about activity completion first, because if I didn't, then it wouldn't make any sense. So now I can say require students to complete some activity before they can see this section. And honestly, I use this one on every single block in my course so that if they haven't completed the test of the section before, they don't see the next section. I don't ever have to go and unhide topics in my class because they automatically are restricted based on the previous test. So as soon as they take the test, boom, next section is available, kind of thing.
And that's the thing, is that as yours makes things appear, you can also use this to make things disappear.
That is true. So let me show you. So activity completion, if I click on that, it just shows students must match one of the following. Activity completion, choose the activity. So now, all the things that I have said activity completions on, I have all of those available in my class. So I can say that they have to have taken the Chapter 3 test. It has to be marked complete. I can have any of those. Must be a passing grade, must be a failing grade, must not be marked complete, must be marked complete, any of those. So I can say, okay, it has to be marked complete in order to see it. Right now it's in order to get to it. If I poke it in the eye over here, which teachers that have been with Moodle for a while are used to seeing that icon, now in order to even see this whole section is invisible until they've completed this activity. That's one completion thing. And like Dan said, I could add another one. I could say also date. So it also has to be after, we'll say December 1st. So even if they've done the test, they can't see it until after December 1st. So now it's saying all these things have to be done. You have to finish the fight, and it has to be after December. I wish that Moodle had a no date thing. I wish that was a present year, because you have to reset that every year, and that sucks. Yeah. Because it would be nice if it said from December 1st of this year should be one of the drop downs. If I wrote the code, but I didn't write the code. So that's one of the things that every year I have to go back. So you can do that, and you can even do this. You can say that, you can add, well, let me go through all of them. So you've got dates, you can say grades. So you can say students that get to see this are ones that took the, let's see, they currently have, okay, it's second quarter, so let me go and just find second quarter. Second quarter. Okay, that have the second quarter grade greater than 90%. So now I've got these restrictions, and they've got to be good in the class, because this is a bonus activity. This is one that goes aside. So you can say it has to do all these. It doesn't have to be all. You can just as easily make this say any of these. So in this case, they have to finish this, or it has to be after that date, or they have to have greater than 90% of the grade in the class. The restriction sets, the cool thing about them is the fact that you can use them to differentiate classes. You could use it to run your class, which I do, just like you do now, but now you're going in, you're saying I'm unhiding section 4. Now I'm unhiding section 5. Now I'm, as you go, and I know a lot of teachers are like, you can have it like Dan said, have it, I'm going to go out to my class just to go out here. So I know some teachers go and hide previous chapters. They only want the current chapter they're on to be shown. So I could here on this chapter 1, I can say edit topic, and I could say restrict access, which I already have a restriction on there. They have to be done these, and I can add another restriction and say activity completion must not be marked complete. So if I'm in chapter 1, so I do the chapter 1 fight. So as soon as they've taken the test for chapter 1 disappears. And I can make chapter 2 up here. So I can do the exact opposite thing and say, well, you can't have done this, because if you did, you're done with the chapter, and now the chapter's closed. I don't do that. I don't like that. Personally, I like leaving my sections open so kids can look back at them, but that's me. I know that there are teachers that go through and hide every single section that they're not currently in, because they want to make sure the kids are only looking at this, and this is a super easy way to do it. The section just closed itself. They finished the test and they hit submit. Where'd chapter 1 go? Well, you're done with chapter 1. And consequently, chapter 2 just all of a sudden showed up. It's totally gone. Mm-hmm. Or,
Well,
so
there's one teacher I know that actually does this, so that if the grade comes up a certain one, a second chance opportunity for points will automatically open up if they scored between a certain range. It's like you want another chance at doing well for the test grade. that would actually go in.
I'll be honest, I have that in my class, but it's not based on the test. The grade. If you get an 85 and you want to do additional activities to try to raise your grade, I don't see why I would let somebody with a 60 try to raise their grade, but not let somebody with a 90. If I want to be valedictorian in the class and I want to try to get a 95 or 96, whatever an A is in our high school scale, why would I let one kid try to redo their grade and not another? So mine has nothing to do with the grade. So, for instance, I'll just show you what I'm talking about on that, Dan. And this is true in every single section. I'm gonna turn this off for a second. By the way, Sharon, in fact, I can go back here. One thing that restriction sets does is it clobbers your class and makes it very messy. Because if you look at my class, see it says that's restricted, that's restricted, that's restricted, that's every single thing in my class is restricted based on something else. And it kind of makes it ugly. I've made this new view that if you go up here and say switch role to, it's called clean course view. If you pick that view, all the restrictions are now hidden. It's just nice, and here's what it's best for. I take screenshots for my lesson plans, and with all those restrictions on there, I'm sure a sub would be like, bah, So it just makes it look clean for me. Or if I want to just tell students, hey, you didn't do this, because this is what a student sees. Now, they honestly don't see that, because when they come into this section, they see only that. And as soon as they read the ICANNs, they see the self-assessment. And as soon as they take the self-assessment, they see the reading assignments and the Chapter 1 book. As soon as they've read the Chapter 1 book, they see the mission, how PCs, all these things automatically just show up in my class because of restriction sets. That's why it looks real messy, but it doesn't look messy at all to a kid. To them, all they see is the thing that they can see right now, right? So you can see, like the Chapter 1 book, not available unless the activity, Chapter 1 self-assessment, is marked complete, hidden otherwise. So they don't see this. You don't have to make it hidden otherwise.
But yeah, okay, because that's because it's hidden otherwise, and they don't even see the restriction set.
Yeah, they don't even know why they don't see it.
He has the eye poked.
Okay.
If you don't have the eye poked, they see why they can't interact.
Yeah, it says it shows Chapter 1 book cannot open until they know why they can't get to it. I don't do that. I'm like, hey, you guys know there's little check marks. If the stuff you can see isn't checked, that's why you can't see something else. So make it be checked.
Yeah, so poking the eye is really the best option, I think. You use it too, Brad, because it keeps it really clean for them. And there's no mistaking it, because it's like the next thing that pops up that has no check mark in the box.
So if I put that on there, when I have 2 different tests for my different groups, okay?
Okay, and that's a great example.
Because they can see both tests.
They can't with this. If you
With
use
that.
a restriction. So
Okay.
like, here's a, let me go to my next chapter.
I restrict it like you have to be in Language Arts 1 for this test, and you have to be in Language
And
Arts 2 for this test.
if you poke it in the eye, they can't see it at all.
So
Unless
here's
they're-
a perfect
Unless they're in
example
that group.
of what you're saying. This, only kids in Orange 2 can see. This is right
Okay.
now hidden because I don't have 2 sections of this
Right.
class. But it used to be one set of kids saw this one set of kids saw this one, and it looks exactly the same.
Right.
Because in the restriction, if I go on there, I can say under the restrictions, let me go to the edit settings down here at the bottom. Right now it says must have done this, but I can also add a group and say, you also have to be in this class to see that one. So you could, and I can
So
hook
I
that in the
poke
eye, so
that
that
too.
one section of your class sees one test. Now that's class periods, but you could just as easily make a group that's your IP students,
Oh, okay.
and then say one of them gets this one that says
Well, my Language Arts 1 is the IP, and then the Language Arts 2 is my other groups.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is that he said, literally, there is so much that we could talk about this for days on what you can do. You literally could restrict it down to one kid in this class whose initials are this.
Yeah, I mean,
Now,
there's.
I have done that before, but then everybody else saw it, because I didn't know to
Yeah.
poke it
Yeah,
out.
if you
Yeah.
poke it in the eye, they don't even. The other kids don't see it,
Okay.
and so you can make the same activity. And Lon does this next door. He's got this. He makes his test, and then he makes a copy of the test, and he deletes 10 questions, and then he makes another copy of the test, and he deletes another 10 questions,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what I did.
this is all the kids.
Okay.
And then it says, unless you're in, because you can say and group. You can say the opposite too. You can say, you can add, it's called a restriction set down here. But on a restriction set, I can say group. And I can say must not be in this group. So I could have a test and say, this test is this group of kids, this test is this group of kids, this test is this group of kids. Poke them in the eye. Every kid sees the same thing. They don't know they're not taking the same test as the kid next to them. He doesn't know he's not taking the same test as either one of them. And you've basically differentiated a test for your different levels of kids, and they have no one in the room knows they're not clicking on the same link.
So I can even do that within rooms.
Yes, right. In the same room, that's what
Yeah.
Lon's doing. In the same room, every kid in the room is clicking on the Chapter 2 test. They're not clicking on the same link. It just looks like the same link. The only downside is, in your grade book, you're going to see Chapter 3, you're going to see 3 Chapter 3 tests, but some kids have grades in this one, some kids have grades in this one.
But they won't see.
No,
They
no.
won't.
Right now,
the
they-
user report that is what they see in your class looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
The only one that looks different is when you're in user report and you click myself, which means teacher. When you do that, you'll see everything that's in there. Now, the only thing that Brian did go on there, all right, now, you'll see that he actually put NT36 in both of those.
Yeah, I need to.
Don't do that.
If I said must be in this, must not be in this, no one would see it.
Yeah,
Right.
because
blows up.
it's eliminating everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying, those people who are watching this
Yeah.
on video, don't
Yeah.
do
So really, if I was trying to do that, what I just
You
said,
yeah.
I down here in the restrictions, I would only add restriction set and then say group, and the restriction set is the only one where you can say must not. So that's when you can say, okay, it's everybody in the class except for this group sees this,
Okay.
and then you can make them see the other one.
Right.
So
You do have a must not above, all right, there.
right,
But,
but then
use
it's
a
everything.
restriction set when you're trying to exclude people. It's a lot easier. It clumps it all together, and it's one of those that if you change your mind, you can go in and delete the restriction set, and everything will go away.
Yeah, what Dan's saying basically is that I could have also just added the restriction set group and said must not be in that, and hide it, and the other one would say must be in that, but it starts. I don't know. I like the restriction set too.
Yeah, because there's you can build something that narrows it down to the group you want specifically, and including the ones where you have subgroups. I mean, you may actually, like he was saying, that there's
See,
a
and this
teacher
is-
that has like 3 different groups, and it's the same material, but the test is structured a little bit different.
And you could either say this one's for this kid. So I mean, you can, and that's what I was saying. I can go into the user profile and say only Josh gets this, right? And because maybe you only have one IEP kid in your room, but you want him to get a totally separate test, but not know that he's getting totally separate tests.
Yeah, click on that second option. That's one thing that's made it.
Which
It's where
one?
it says equal to. Look what else you could actually do with that.
Contain.
Like the name contain, like the last name contains this. It starts with
Yeah,
this. it
you could
ends with
say
this.
so on one test you could say last name is equal to pool, and then the next option doesn't equal pool, so he doesn't see the test everybody else does. So when you do 2 copies of the same thing and you're doing differentiating, you have to look at it one time and say, okay, Does everybody I want in this one can't see this one? Everybody that I want in this one can't see this one. You kind of have to think the logic through to make sure you.
And when you do make copies, though, that there is a thing, is that it will look exactly the same to you, too. Because the test is, when you do a copy, it is
Right.
exact duplication. So when you see it in the grade book, all right, it looks the same for the kids, it looks the same. So you may want to make sure that you are ordering it in your topic.
And what he's
So
saying
you
is,
can
like, if you got a chapter. So here's a good example. I've got this fights here twice. This is for one group of kids, and this is the other. What he's saying is, you start out with all the questions. So this is the class. Now this is the easier one, and you keep with that as your own personal. When you copy, the copy always goes underneath. Otherwise, it's going to get confusing to you because it looks
Can't I
exactly
go
the same.
in and label it something like fight A,
Well, and then they'll see that.
Then
then
they'll
they-
know that they're different.
Yeah.
but then they know they have a different test?
Yeah.
Yeah, now you could actually,
I mean, does it matter if you just put an A and a B? As far as they know, you're like, well, some of you get in test A and some of you get in test B, so you don't cheat. They might just think that's all it is. When really it's a
Totally different. test.
totally different test, right?
Because my lower groups, I don't shuffle everything because my
And that's a
intervention
perfect
specialist
example that
reads
you
it.
could do the exact same test,
yeah.
and then turn off shuffling, turn off everything on this
Your
one.
first one would be your differentiated one with no shuffling. Then you make a copy of it, then say shuffle, and now you have.
However, it just
Whichever
needs to make
one.
sense to you.
Uh-huh.
Mine are always the hardest test first to the easiest test, so
But
that
I
I
can-
know in the grade book, when I see it in the grade book, I'm going to see chapter 4.1 fight, and then I'm going to see chapter 4.1 fight again. I know this is the one that most kids get, and this is the IEP one, you know what I mean? Because it's going to show up in this, unless you move it, it's going to show up in this order in the grade book. Of course, you can move those things all you want.
Right.
Well, I actually had ones that pulled their questions from completely different banks.
That's just confusing.
That's why I had so many questions.
So,
I had like 1,400.
there are way more things you can do with restrictions, and you can make them see, not see, get access to, and it's not. I mean, let me go back in. There, like I said, there's a whole bunch of restrictions that you can do. So we've got. Let me just add a restriction again. So activity means any activity you did before. You can say you did or did not do it. So. That doesn't mean it has to be completed, but you have to have already had it do activity completion in order to say whether it was one that you did or did not do. So date, obviously, before or after dates. Grades, we saw that you can say above, below, or within this band. You can make different activities show up. Groups, we can group our kids, and I think that's the easiest way to do some of the IEP stuff. Is I throw my IEP kids, and I wish I don't really have many IEP kids anymore. When I was doing Computer 1, I had tons. You get one that IEP says reads the third grade reading level. How do you build your online course for that when there's no way to do? I mean, we didn't have an online course, and this didn't exist in the old versions of Moodle. There were no restrictions set. There's no way to differentiate and stuff. So that's pretty awesome. This user profile thing, it's very specific, and if it was just one kid, that would be an easy way to do it. I don't know how much I'd use that one, honestly. We don't have any.
The user profile one?
Yeah.
That one actually works well if you want to open up an activity for someone to complete at home, but you only want that kid to have access. Say like, so-and-so is going to be out for a long period of time for whatever, and you want them to be able to work on this stuff, but you only want them to have access to it. So you literally could make a separate activity for just them,
You can change the network address so they can do it
yeah,
at home.
you could change the network address and then say only Joe Schmo. And put that criteria on there. And then only Joe Schmo can actually do it.
I almost think we should have it import other things in some of these other silly fields, because we can add fields too. I just wonder if there, as I look at this, if there's other things that we should be having except for I think everybody would see it. I don't know. I think the kids would see it on. I don't know if you want to load IEP information into Moodle. The kids would only see their own, but because you could use it, like if you could have it for. And I don't know, is that right, wrong? We track how we're doing with minorities and IEP kids and stuff. Would it be bad to put minority status in there?
Well,
so that you could do activities based on, or is that?
It would help people from having to go to Dazzle to go find it.
Yeah, that's what I'm just
because it's not a guarantee that everybody has those pieces of paper at the beginning of the year.
I just wonder if there's a way we could load that into their Moodle profile. I gotta make a note to myself because that honestly might be a way.
If it's in Dazzle, you should be able to pull it.
Well, yeah, but I gotta make I either have to load it into one of these silly fields or make a custom field because you can't make custom fields in Moodle. Then we import into.
Well, they definitely need a Skype ID.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We could use does ICQ even exist anymore? Do people still use that? I haven't used that for 15 years. Anyway, I'm off task there with that. But
only in Australia.
Do groups and you can use their name if it's just one kid that you're doing a test for. So
yeah.
I'm not sure that we really need be beyond those two things. If you can hide it with covering the eye, then I'm not sure that
we would need to do that.
We need to go to that extent.
Okay. So let me see. So we talked about user profile. Okay, stash object. That's part of gamification, and I use that. What does that mean? There are things that you can put in your Moodle course the kids have to pick up in order to get. It makes them have to read it.
For more information on that.
Well,
you could easily.
I'm just going to show Sharon if she hasn't seen one before what I'm talking about.
He loves doing stash.
I like doing stash because it makes the kids look in their reading for stuff. So I put my books in. Let me see if I can find one. Of course, I don't know where they all are off the top of my head. This is an online book, by the way.
The descriptor does a really good job of telling you where it's located.
Yeah, I guess I could have. Oh wait, I'm not even in the book anymore, am I?
No.
I think I went next to something else. Let me see. Oh, it's I know it's in here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is a stash right here that the kids have to, because I tell them they have to click on all the links. So if they click on this, see how they click on it, it actually picks it up and puts it in their stash. It's kind of like they have a vault of things they pick up.
Does it have to look like that, though?
It could look like, you can add any picture you want to. You can add any picture you want to. So if I go over here to stash and I go to the stash report, you can see my kids, what they picked up, how many, like this one was available more than once. So they picked it up a couple times. Dan, you haven't been picking up anything. And different kids have picked up different stash. And by picking it up, they get points. Like for instance, here's one of the stash was the gold star that they only got to see if they got above a 95% in the last test. So as soon as they got a 95, the gold star showed up for those kids. It's a stash that said, you got a gold star. And when they click on it and pick it up, now they're going to get a badge based on how good they did in that section. So it kind of badges and stash. Stash is nice because it makes kids take the time to read through what you gave them if they know there's hidden Easter eggs. And that's the way I think of it. I think of it as Easter eggs in the reading. And they can say things like pick me up. So if I go to this one and I go to the I can here, this one you put in whatever words you want. So they have to click Reddit, and when they click on that, that's a stash. They pick it and it goes into their stash. They read that. Okay. You can by default I think it says pick me up, and you can put whatever words you want to. So you basically for stash, and you're right, Dan. I could spend a lot of time on stash. If you add stash to yours, it's really easy to set up. I'll show you. You just hit setup. You go and say I want to add a stash item. You name it. You give it a picture. and then you say where it's going to belong, and then you basically drop it into the class, and then it shows up there, and the kids can go and pick up the stash wherever they're at. And my point is that you could say in the restriction set down here, you can't take the test until you've picked up all the stash in chapter 4. In other words, you've done all the reading, you found the Easter eggs everywhere, now the test shows up. The only problem is that when you tell kids we're going to take the test on a Friday, and you have kids show up and they can't see the test, there's no way to make it so all of a sudden they can see the test other than removing the restriction set. I mean, I could go in and say, delete the restrictions, and now the test all of a sudden shows up. So you really have to, if you use stash to hide stuff, you need to make sure the kids are clear that your responsibility, we have class time, you need to go through everything, make sure you've read everything, and make sure you've picked up all the stash. Because you can say how often that stash can show up. Like you can say it shows up every hour, so if I picked it up, it's there again, so I can collect it by going back. You could say it only shows up one time. Once you've picked it up, you've got it. That's it, kind of thing. So that's what it is when it's stash object, and I do use that because I want to know. You know, I can say with the activity completion that if you went in here, you get completion for that reading. But how do you know how long they were in there? You don't.
You could actually give them a completely different test based on how many stashes.
You could. You could.
So it's like, hey, thanks for going around and looking at stuff. You get this kind of
You
test.
get the easy test. You read everything twice. Like, what? I get an easier test.
Well, yeah, you literally could actually have a separate test that opens up that has a little tiny cheat sheet. Thanks for helping out. Boom, there you go. You did this on your test. They're like, what? And it was like, yeah, you should have been looking through all that stuff.
So,
Wow.
stash,
And the kids
you
think
can
of it
do
like
fun
stick.
things. I mean, I think that's one of the things that, I mean, it's a summer thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I totally understand that all the things we're going over. I did all my restriction set last year during the school year, but I did it one chapter at a time, and this year I'm going through it again, tweaking it, right? Because I'm like, okay, chapter 4 doesn't open, chapter 3 test is done. I got it set up for that, and now I got to go through chapter 4 while we're doing chapter 3 to try to get them set up. And I had mistakes. There were times kids go, I've done it 3 times, Mr. Poole, and I still don't see it. I'm like, oh yeah, oops, I put that grade thing on there, and you know. But I like stash to try to make them. I try to make the game, the course more like a game. It's part of gamification. They got to look around. They got to find stuff. And I try to make it stuff that's relative to what they're reading, and that, you know, oh, they read that, they found it. Because you can make those pictures really small, and you can make them say nothing too. Like that one battery, it said nothing. You have to, if you don't mouse over it, you don't find it, kind of thing. Level is if you're doing levels in you're gamifying your class, and I don't know whether you ever have looked at it, but in my class, you've got to have Level Up installed, and so if you do, then my kids get, you know, there are different levels in the course. Everybody's level 5 through level 6, somewhere in there, and you could have the level 6 kids get one thing, and the little 5 kids get something else. These kids have picked up more stash because they've taken more redos on quizzes. So they've got more experience than these kids do, and so I can make it do something different based on level. But that's what that is. Just if you see it and you're like, what's level? And then restriction sets, and I know I hit it, but restriction sets are about adding a bunch of stuff together. So you can say, okay, the overall must be any of these. So now it's a this or this, and now this I can put a whole bunch of things inside of, because I can keep adding restrictions inside the restriction set. It can get kind of complex, but it's as much as you want to do with it, right? So it just allows you to say, okay, they haven't got that done, but we're supposed to take the test on Friday, so must match one of the following. Okay, it's after whatever date, and so you can add more things on there if you want to. So that's, in a nutshell, activity completion and restriction sets. You don't have to do them both together. But I'm not sure why you would do well, I guess I do. You could do activity completion and never use restrictions because you can use those same activity completions to do badges if you wanted to have it do badges. So I do badges, so my kids get automatically awarded badges. Where's my badges? Okay. I don't see badges because...
I got a piece of stash down there.
So, go ahead.
I went and got myself a piece of stash.
Did you? Okay. So, basically, badges are automatically awarded based on something, and you can use activity completion to be those things. So, in this case, they have to have completed this whole laundry list of things in order to get their basic computing badge. And when they get it, it pops up and says, "Congratulations, you've earned the basic computing badge." And it shows in the middle of their screen when they hit those. That's a good example of how you can use activity completion even if you don't use restrictions. So you can see only 5 of the 7 kids got the basic computing. Everybody got the orienteering, which is introduction to the class. All the kids got the one for, it's called the operating systems penguin. Only 1 kid got that one, right? So that only 1 person did all those things in order to earn that badge, right? But I mean, I've only got, because when we did the restore, I lost all my badges. So I'm rebuilding my badges right now, and I kind of build 1 per chapter so that the kids who do really well in the chapter in my class earn a badge for, hey, you did all these things and you did really well. It's kind of like their digital pat on the back kind of thing. It doesn't have to be based on grades at all. You can just say, if you did these activities, you get a badge, and that way the kids that don't have great grades still get rewards for attempting.
It is seriously the cheapest way to give a kid a sticker or something. And you literally could base it off of certain things. Like you can make you can make a piece of stash that he had there before show up based off of how you did on something. So they could get you could have a bronze star, a silver star, and a gold star, but they only show up is like if the score was above this or between this. Yeah. And it will do it all for you. And the kid's like, woo, and you're like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, and same thing when the kids level up. It's a big, huge thing. You've leveled up. They get a new avatar over here on the side. This is my level 0 avatar. So they get a different monk showing up on the side.
But the funny thing is, they're starting to do this more even in business.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you got a badge because you went to
Google's huge on it, giving you a Google badge when you do something.
Well, some of those tech things we go to now,
Yeah.
you get a badge. You get a badge for doing this stuff. It's not like a certificate. Boom, there's your badge. And it was like, post it on your social media someplace. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So, and they see if you've got the thing on the side. If I logged on as a student, they see all their badges on the side they've awarded. I kind of put that bottom of the side, like they don't see any of these other things. I guess they would see the activity result. So it doesn't push stuff too far down on the side, because depending on how many badges the kids work really hard in your class are going to get all of them, right? And then so
there will be that Eagle Scout, and stuff.
Yeah. So do you have any questions, Sharon, about any of it? I mean, I think some of the things you can do, and that's why I get it. I really, really like Moodle because of all the things. There's a million things that no one knows about, right? That we don't use, or that very few teachers use, that really are engaging for kids to get them doing stuff. And I think this stuff makes activity restrictions makes it better. I think makes it easier for me to manage and do stuff for the kids. But the stash and the badges and the levels make them more engaged in the class.
So you're saying you can't do this on like Google Classroom?
Well, I don't know. No, you can't. Okay. I don't use Google Classroom. There are a lot of things that we can do on Moodle that you can't do on any other platform. And if you went and did some research on gamifications and your learning management system, it's got the most, and the level up thing costs $95 or something to buy that add-on. It's the only add-on we've ever bought but it's good forever. It's not like I have to buy it again.
For a district.
So the level up, how do I get that up there if I want to get it?
You just add it. You add level up, and then you have to go in and go through the settings, and maybe we should make that. Did we do that last class?
He'd show you exactly where it is. It's a block.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's
when
just
you
a
go to add
block you add on the side.
He can't really show you because he already added it. It's a one-time deal.
Okay.
All right, so
And it automatically by default, it automatically has stars and levels. I added the pictures, right? And I added the names that they'll become a novice, an initiate, a brother, a disciple, a master, a superior. I added all those.
Okay, where do I go to get it? I guess that's.
Okay, so let me go to another. I'll show you on somebody else's class. I'll just go there and mess with it. We'll go to guidance. I'm sure they don't have it. So you just turn editing on. And then go over on the side once it turns on. I turned it on. There we go. Go over on the side and you go to add a block, and one of the blocks is level up. So as soon as I add level up, now it's there, and by default it uses stars, and I have to go then into the settings, and I kind of go through the stuff one time. You can leave it based on the stars that are there. The ladder just shows who's in it. The levels, you could leave it exactly the way it is. The only thing I have to do, I think, is turn it on, right? Oh, it's even on by default.
Yeah.
So right now, if you wanted to, you could leave it just the way it is, turn it on, and it would start getting experience points and leveling up in the class.
And which would be a good idea. And then when you feel more comfortable and you want to add more stuff to it,
You can tweak it, but
Yeah.
the default is good enough for you. Hey, I just want to see how it goes, see what the students. Now you'll see they get level 1. They'll have it by the end of the week. Level 2 maybe next week, but the farther it goes, the harder it is. They are plateauing right now at level 5 and 6.
The bigger the gap is going to be. So it's kind of like you want to go, hey, good job, but this isn't free.
Okay, I guess I should point out one thing over here on the side. On the ladder is whether they can see each other. So do you want it to show their identity or hide their identity? And by default, you can say, hey, you can just see yourself and one person above and below you, or up to 5 people. So it's either everyone, or 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, or 5. So if you say 5 people above and below you, unless you see no one below you, you don't know you're at the bottom, kind of thing. You can. My kids have their name showing. Maybe you want to have it anonymous, because if you do that, they still see where they're at, but they don't know who's who, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if I did it this way and I hit save changes, I know where I'm at on the ladder, and I know that there's people above and below me, but I don't know who they are and kind of that kind of thing. So that's just something that you might want to turn that on initially, and then think about whether you want to show names. I know.
And the thing is, it's not connected with a grade.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything.
And it's basically
But you can make it a restriction on other things. You can reward the kids who are furthest ahead, or the kids who haven't done hardly anything. You can say, hey, while you're level 1, here's some things you can do to level up, and they disappear as soon as you're level 2. So the classes I've gone to on gamification talk about how seeing each other on leaderboards motivates kids to beat other kids, and their opinion is it's a good thing. I think it's up to the teacher whether it's a good thing. And a lot of them have big posters in their room because they don't have Moodle, so they don't have a way to digitally do it. Since it's digital, is it better to not show the name? I don't know the answer to that question.
I didn't say digitally. It does allow that opportunity for you to show them a little bit, whereas up on a board you see everybody.
Yeah, there's no way to hide anything.
Like the old pull a card thing from elementary. It was like Johnny's on a blue card today, or Susie's on a red card.
Yeah. You could go each one.
Which I take elementary kids would bring that stuff home and say, so-and-so got in trouble, I think you gotta pull a
You
card.
got a red card, yeah.
I still got the door locked. I thought you were gonna unlock. Oh, the door isn't locked.
I
It's
left it
open.
ajar.
It's just some weirdos that stand outside the hallway. That's all.
Okay.
Some scary guy.
The couple
Serious,
questions.
scary guy in the hallway.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
I think
Okay, I'm
we're not
stopping.
broadcasting, are we?